Being kidnapped by someone is is an experience that a lot of people don't want to experience. But unfortunately, this happens a lot more than anyone knows. Sometimes when someone gets kidnapped, it can be either be just being one single individual or multiple people. I was aware of the danger of being kidnapped after being seeing a lot of movies and TV shows that I would been have been at least aware of the most common signs of kidnapper, like the typical kidnapper vans or like that. I never believed I would be one of the people that could eventually be targeted as a kidnapped victim. But unfortunately, it happened. My name is Amy, and this happened to me during the summer of 2014 when I was only 18 years old. And it took place in my home state of Oregon. It's a long story. Despite it have been so long, I still remember all of this quite vividly. And of course, there are a lot of details that I still remember. So this is a quite of a long story, since I was kidnapped and held captive by my kidnapper for 2 years. I managed to escape 2016, but I'm a little bit ahead of me. So let me start when all this happened. It all happened during the summer of 2016 when I was on my way home from a friend's house. When I was on the sidewalk, I passed a van parked on the sidewalk, and I didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, I've seen many vans before, but suddenly, as I was just in front of the van, suddenly a man jumped out of the bushes and grabbed me, and he had me tight in by his arm, and he opened the van door, pushed me in, and closed the door fast, and he jumped down in his driver's seat and took off. I was I was puzzled because it happened so fast. Like my brain couldn't even process what just suddenly happened. But as I quickly remember what happened when I came to it, I was thrown back and forward in the van as this driver took off so fast. There was no seats, and there was nothing in there that I could even keep myself hold on to as he was driving. He drove and drove for hours. I don't know exactly how many hours, but during this time he slowed down his speed, and I was somehow passed out. I somehow must have fallen asleep since he was driving non-stop. Even if he did stop, I don't know, because I probably was still passed out or something. But when I woke up, I felt the car or the van stopped, and the door suddenly opened, and the man grabbed me by my arm again and forced me inside a house. As I did notice, there was no houses nearby. There was like basically middle of nowhere. He took me in the house, through the building, and to a basement. And it was like a soundproof basement. He tells me if I try anything, he would kill me without a doubt. He then just threw me on the mattress that was on the floor. And here's the layout. Despite it has been many years, I remember this is not your typical basement where a concrete floor or anything. This was like if someone had turned this basement to some sort of second living room space, like with wood floor, wood panels, but no windows. So there was just a mattress on the floor and a small, I would say call a small bathroom or something like this for a toilet. And he tells me to just stay there, and after he left, I spent the whole night on the mattress crying. In fact, he didn't even give me anything to eat that whole night. I was so hungry, but I didn't care if I was hungry or not. I was crying that I was taken away from my family by force. But it wasn't until the next day when the man came down to the basement. He had a tray with some sandwiches on it, and I demanded to know why he took me and and to let me go, but he refused to even do that. He tells me that I'm gonna be his new wife, since apparently he has been watching me for months, and that he had chosen me. This terrified me, knowing a strange man, apparently a man in his 40s, had been watching me for months without me knowing it. But even though he gave me food and left and locked the door behind him, I later learned his name was Roger. And as I was sitting on the mattress, crying and thought of my family, if I was ever going to see them again, without knowing how far I was taken away from my hometown or something. Even though this is just, it's it was crazy. And like I said earlier, there were no windows along the basement, so there was not like I could just try to escape from them. But even if there were a window, there were no furnitures in the basement I could stand on, and there was only one door, but it was locked from the outside. And even so, there were, like I mentioned earlier, I remember there was no houses nearby as far as I could see. There were just dense woods and a dirt road. There was nothing. I was crying. For the next few days, the man gave me still food and talked to me to make me feel comfortable. But honestly, I doubted that even that's gonna make me feel comfortable. Then try to. I do believe that he's trying to talk to me so I would feel comfortable and start to love him or something like that, to trust him. But honestly, I would never in my life trusted that. But I didn't trust him. But at least he wasn't violent to me. Based on the many movies and or TV shows, based on where people actually been kidnapped, they could have been violently attacked, could have been violently been raped or anything. But at least Roger wasn't anything like that to me, which to me it was a positive thing. But the only thing he did, even if I refused to do anything or disobey him for or demand things, he was just slapping my face. That was all he did. So, but after a week of this, I slowly started to giving up hope to be found, and I started listening to him more and more. And I started to ask some certain items like a TV or books, so I could at least keep myself entertained if something that he did would provide it with. But what he didn't know, I was slowly trying to win his trust so that I could get more freedom in the house or something. But it took me months to be able to gain access to the rest of the house. And I did learn the fact it was pointless to even ask for the neighbors, since there were no neighbors for many miles, and since he was basically living in the middle of nowhere. And well, I also learned that he had a few hunting rifles and a two handguns, so if I acted on anything, I wouldn't without a doubt he would try to use them to hurt me or anything, or at least threaten to use them. So I acted to win his trust and heart. So now I at least had a free movement around his house at any time of the day, but still I had to spend the night in the basement with the door locked. At least it's a positive thing that I managed to get that much access to the house. But after 6 months, he finally gave me my own room in the house. But it was like my own room. But when I saw it, it had bars by the window. So that was another question that I could even try to escape from that. And even if I tried, he would hear me, and yeah, it's the one thing I don't want to even think of. So it was one of the things. And the front door was locked all the time when he was not at the house. So I was unable to leave. After he had left, I did check around the house. All that the windows did actually had the bars on them, and the doors were locked, which I was impossible to leave. So from that day on, I started getting more After I gained my own room, I still tried to gather enough hope and time to manage to leave. But when Roger left the house, he locked it. And in fact, he never even took me anywhere with the risk that anyone would see me. So when I was at the house, he made sure that I wouldn't be able to leave. But one day, I would be able to do that. But after 2 years of being living as a prisoner with my kidnapper, when Roger was out of the house, I was just looking around a way out of the house. But since I know the window was locked and locked tight and with the bars on, but there was only one window in the house that was locked or even had bars on it. That was the bathroom window. It was a small window, but it was big enough for me to be able to crawl out of it. In fact, I practiced all crawling out, but not entirely out of the house though. So, I knew I had at least one way out of the house. And as the day came, one day that would mark the 2-year mark of my kidnapping, I took enough courage. While Roger was in a deep sleep, I was in my own room, and when I saw that the clock was 1 in the morning, it was time for me to act on the plan. I mean, I don't know how much more I could take this. So I sneaked up to the window, out of the bed to the bedroom, without waking up Roger. In the bedroom, I locked the door, opened the window quietly, crawled out as silent as possible, and as soon as I was on the ground, I took off running. I ran along the side of the house to the dirt road barefoot. I thought maybe that Roger would hear me if I had shoes on while running. And since I didn't know which direction to go, so I just took one way along the dirt road. But after half an hour, after 30 minutes, I was tired. I was tired of the constant running barefoot. My feet was hurting and almost giving up. I was to find help. But then, I saw it. I saw it was a house, which still has the light on. It somehow gave me an extra boost of energy. I took off running and started knocking crazy on the door, screaming for help. The door suddenly opened after only a few seconds when a woman in her mid-30s opened it. The woman asked me why I was banging on her door, and I told her what happened to me, that I had escaped my kidnapper, and the woman saw me. I wasn't lying. It took me in. She called the local sheriff, and I was no longer in Oregon. In fact, I was happening across the state to Idaho. My hometown wasn't even that far from the border, less than a couple of hours at most, perhaps 2-3 hours. And the woman and her husband took care of me until the sheriff would show up. After 15 minutes, the sheriff and his deputy and the other officers did show up. He took my report. He and his deputy and other officers went to Roger's house, and they arrested him. While he was in a squad car, the sheriff and one of his officers walked around in the house, found the basement, and it matched what I told them in this description of the layout of the basement and of the new room I had for the rest of my remaining years there, remaining time. Roger was arrested for kidnapping of me. My parents, they were called, and they got the call they had been waiting for 2 years. The next day, my parents showed up, and they hugged me, and we all cried. I was once again reunited with my family. Roger was now facing kidnapping charges, and with the recorded witness tape from me, since my parents, they didn't want to have me to stand trial after what I went through for 2 years. They thought I wouldn't even handle to see my kidnapper once more, which I wouldn't likely to even do. But with no witness tape that I had provided for, Roger was sentenced to a lifetime in prison without the possibility of parole. Even after the events was over, I still had nightmares. It's it was a crazy nightmares, even though some of them I don't remember detailedly. But some I do remember at least well enough, where some of the nightmares I did manage to escape, but Roger heard me. He used one of his weapons and killed me, buried me in the middle of nowhere in the woods, and seeing him finding a new target that could be, or or that I would never even had nightmares, but I never did escape it. I had been completely brainwashed by him, having this so-called Stockholm syndrome. But it took me some time to get used to this. I mean, having my family, friends as support, and even going through therapy, it helped. I got used to normal life, but I still sometimes go to therapy for my despite this. Roger tried to reach out to me by asking me for helping him to be released from prison. But it only got him more sentence time since I had a restraining order against him. And it has been 7 years since it all happened. Since then, I got married with a sweet man who would protect me from any harm, and I actually even had two kids of my own, a daughter and a son. I actually planning to telling them the story of the day when I was kidnapped, so they will be aware of the signs of kidnapping, of being they could also be kidnapped. And it was one of the most terrifying times in my life. Sometimes I wish that I just could completely forgot about them, but they will never will be forgotten. Since I had to spend 2 years of one man who kidnapped me, forcing me to be his new wife. It's it was terrifying enough. But at least, thanks to my experience though, I'm working now for a non-profit organization that focused on kidnapping victims of survivors, regardless if it's men or women, regardless of how old they are. I will always be there to help other people that have been going through the same thing. I'm one of the many lucky ones that managed to escape from my kidnapper. You know, a lot of people that manage to be kidnapped usually don't even end up being able to get free themselves. It's the most of the terrifying to knowing that a lot of people that did get kidnapped will eventually lose their life again by the hands of the kidnapper. It's horrifying. It is. I mean, knowing that I was just a normal teenager, like a normal 18-year-old, on my way home from a friend's house, and my life changed for 2 years straight. I never even believed I was ever going to find my home again. In fact, if were even at times I was actually giving up, almost giving up hope, or even just simply giving up entirely and just going along with to be his new wife and all that. But I'm actually happy I didn't do that. I mean, actually, I'm really happy that I never went through that plan at all. If I had, I wouldn't have even been here right now with my husband, my two kids, and with my family, and being here to help other people who have been going through the same experience. I cannot even imagine what other people have seen, what they have went through. Some may have been going through much way worse than I had. But I'm telling other people, and even at this non-profit organization, that regardless what you are going through, you're not alone. This happened to many of us. Even though many never actually been able to see their friends or family ever again, or even lose their lives against in the hands of the kidnapper. But I always been to saying, don't give up hope. Don't give up hope for nothing. Hope is the one thing that keeps you alive. Do anything to protect pretend to win the trust of your kidnapper as a way to being able to escape. That's what I did. So if anyone has been kidnapped or anything, just remember, hope is your biggest ally in this, in a way to find home. But to other people, remember, always being aware of your surroundings. If I was aware of, if I had noticed a man in this, if I had noticed Roger in the bushes, I may have been able to escape. If I had even walked up the other sidewalk, I would not even been here telling the story. But the other person he could have taken may not have been the same luck. So once again, always being aware of your surroundings. That's all you can do for now. So Roger, you are belong where you do belong. Thank you.